Awesome. Well, welcome everybody. My name is Sarah. I am joined today by Manik. We are going to present an introduction to Project Firefly under the title of So You Want to Extend Adobe Experience Cloud.
Awesome. Hey everyone, I am Manik, and I have been part of the Adobe IO organization for close to little over 4 years now, first as an engineer on IO events and now as a product manager on Project Firefly. I'm really excited to be here and talk to you guys about Project Firefly.
So Manik and I actually have very similar background. I also actually used to be a developer myself. I actually started my career as an AEM developer working on helpx.adobe.com. So it's always very familiar to come back and to chat with my fellow AEM developers. All right, so during this session today, we're going to cover basically 3 major bulks of content. I'm first of all going to set some context, some business background, and high-level information about Project Firefly. And then I will hand over to Manik, and he will dive deeper into some of the use cases that we have observed with Project Firefly with AEM, as well as some action items for you if you're interested in getting started. So let me kick off the Project Firefly overview. Before I dive into details on what is Project Firefly, I want to quickly talk about the need to have an open platform and ecosystem. So although Adobe does offer a really wide range and complete suite of marketing solutions, for most customers, oftentimes the out-of-the-box offering is still not enough, and they would need maybe multiple marketing platforms or the ability to extend certain services so that it works the way that they want. It's really with this need in mind that Adobe is moving towards from individual solutions into a platform approach. And we're doing this in many ways, one of which is Open Data Initiative. So really standardizing and unifying data models that is used across marketing platforms, Adobe Exchange, allowing partners to basically build and install applications, and Exchange serving as a marketplace to list and to install those applications. And last but not least, Adobe IO, which concludes a lot of the developer capabilities for extending this platform. So I'm hoping that most of you probably have heard of Adobe IO in the past. The word of the meaning Adobe IO really has grown a lot over the past few years. At the very beginning, we really started with API offerings, as well as the developer console, which is essentially a way for any third-party developers or partners to integrate and to set up API access to Adobe products. From there, we also grew Adobe IO website as well as Exchange for documentation and serving as marketplace for different type of applications. From there, to better enable developers, we started building other pieces of Adobe IO, one of which is Adobe IO Runtime, which you can see on the right-hand side here. Adobe IO Runtime is a serverless platform that allows developers to run custom code on Adobe's infrastructure. We also came up with Adobe IO Events, which is essentially an event gateway that allows developers to receive real-time events from Adobe solutions. On top of that, we also created developer tooling to make it super easy for people to tie all these pieces together, getting APIs, setting up events, building, testing their code, and deploying their applications with ease. Now, it's really the collective offering of these functionalities, aiming to serve a very specific use case of extending Adobe Experience Cloud for enterprise customers. This bucket is what we call Project Firefly. So, Project Firefly. We are a complete design, application, and runtime framework for building third-party cloud-native applications that extend the functionalities of Adobe solutions and run on our infrastructure. We're currently available through Developer Preview, which is basically a form of beta program. And we focus on supporting a lot of the business-to-employee use cases for our DX customers. Picture experience. A customer needs to build a custom UI to visualize a specific enterprise workflow. Using Project Firefly, they can super easily set up the credentials needed for this project, use our developer tooling to build and to deploy this application, and to have this custom UI embedded in Adobe products within the matter of hours. And this application will run on Adobe infrastructure, so there's really no overhead with setting up your own infrastructure. At the current stage, Project Firefly is really targeting system integrator developers as well as enterprise developers. Because we're focusing on kind of business to employee use cases, these are the people who will be working for a specific customer on specific projects. So it's really with these two personas in mind that we designed and built Project Firefly. So first of all, we want to make any hard things easy. Like I said earlier, being able to get started should only take the matter of minutes, like top to an hour. And developers should be able to work really independently and progress without a lot of overhead or administrative work. And the second part is everything you need should be right in the box. In principle, we want to make sure that everything a developer may need for building a cloud-native application, from developer tooling to cloud services to hosting, are all included as part of the box. And in the following section, I'm going to go into a little bit more details about what I mean by in the box and what exactly is in that box. And last but not least, although we want to provide most of these functionalities out of the box, we also want to make sure that our platform is really built in a way that is easily extensible and grows with your need. For instance, if you want to use your own storage service instead of a storage that we've provided out of the box, you can easily bring your own without having to change much of your code to make that happen. I think that it's really like, as you can see, we really prioritize developer experience as well as time to value in how we design Project Firefly. I think one of our record right now is we have a developer who just learned about Project Firefly, started to get set up and try things out. And it only took him 3 days to basically learn about Firefly to pushing something into production to be used. I also want to call it out that Project Firefly is not intended to replace any of the developer capabilities that you can currently use as a part of AEM. The part that you're building workflows, services, templates, none of that. The purpose for Project Firefly is really targeting to serve as an additional way to extend AEM for certain use cases that Monik will go into in more details. So I mentioned that I'm going to talk about what's in the box. So this is the slide that I do that. I'm going to start from kind of the services and infrastructure side of the house. Let's go with Adobe IO runtime. For those of you who probably have heard of serverless in the past, I hope that you take some time to look this up. Adobe IO runtime is our serverless offering that essentially allows your custom code to run on top of. And it comes with all the benefits of a serverless platform, automatically scaling up and down based on the traffic to your application, really idling down when there's no additional cost coming in. In addition to that, we also realized that having serverless platform is not enough for you to build a full cloud native application with maybe UIs and single page applications. You also need things like CDN to host your pages. You need storage to save some files in your application state. So that's really what we offer out of the cloud services bucket. It's all of these individual small services that you might need to build a fully fledged application. Last but not least, we realized the need to really build something that is highly event-driven and can quickly respond instead of running in isolation. So we also offer the ability to set up and to publish and consume custom events as a part of Project Firefly. Other than the services and infrastructure, we also offer kind of a wide range of developer tooling, ranging from CLIs and SDKs that really helps accelerate your development process and development workflow, to additional tooling that goes more in depth into certain directions for debugging or for setting up your CI/CD pipeline. Other than that, we also offer, as a part of Project Firefly, the ability to use React Spectrum in your applications out of the box. So for those of you who have heard of Spectrum before, it is Adobe's design framework. React Spectrum is actually how a lot of Adobe products are built and is using. And after we've open sourced this project, you will be able to actually use React Spectrum, which is the React implementation of Spectrum, in your Firefly applications as well. So I have talked a lot about what is Project Firefly and what are some of the things that it's out of the box and who does these audience serve. Next, I'm going to actually hand off to Manik so that he can actually help illustrate some of these principles and components, like in practice in real customer use cases that we have observed in the past. Over to you.
Thank you so much, Sarah, for that great introduction. And yes, so let's talk about some of the use cases that our customers, our partners are building with Project Firefly. So today, for this audience, we have picked a set of use cases that are more AEM centric, but definitely you can extend other Adobe Experience Cloud solutions, Adobe Experience Platform with Project Firefly. And I would, towards the end of this presentation, I would also talk about some other ways you can learn about more such use cases, but let's go in and dive right into the use cases we have. So the first use case we have is building custom asset processing profiles for AEM as a cloud service. So think of scenarios where when you upload your assets into AEM, you want to add a logo or you want to add a watermark into every asset that you have. And to do so, you could essentially build a custom asset processing profile, which is a Firefly application. This application would receive events through Adobe IO events. Whenever a new asset is uploaded, this application would then fetch the content of the asset, use the Creative Cloud API. So you can use the magic of Lightroom APIs, Photoshop APIs to generate and manipulate content. And then finally, once your rendition is ready, you have applied all sorts of transformations to it. This application would then finally upload the rendition back into your AEM as a cloud service, and it is now available for you to use elsewhere. So why this is great is because doing it this way, this out-of-band processing does not affect the performance, does not affect the responsiveness of your AEM DAM. Once you upload these assets, these custom asset processing profile runs in Firefly, runs on a serverless architecture, generates these renditions and puts them back into AEM. Another great thing is that you can redeploy these Firefly applications without having to redeploy AEM. So ultimately, customers of ours are using Project Firefly to build these custom asset processing profile. There's another session on this in the same conference. I will talk to you about that at the end of this presentation. So keep an eye out for that. So the next use case we have is for server-side rendering. So some of our customers want to render content. So they're building single page applications, but for some pages, especially if they are really concerned about search engine optimization, or they're concerned about the load times for especially complex pages, they want to opt for server-side rendering. Server-side rendering, as compared to client-side rendering, is where the HTML DOM is generated on the server side and then is served as is, instead of the DOM being manipulated by client-side JavaScript. So with Project Firefly, you can build a headless Firefly application that would allow you to generate this content on the server side and then serve it as is. So how it works is, for any request that is configured for server-side rendering, the request would go to AEM. From AEM, it would go to the Firefly application. The application would generate this content, and through AEM, push it back to the visitor on the browser. Now, the interesting thing to note here is, if the request is identical, then the Firefly application would serve the same generated content from cache. It won't generate it again. So it then really further lowers the response time for those pages. And one other interesting thing is that Project Firefly, because our entire stack right now is focused around JavaScript, so the traditional front-end developers can really leverage Project Firefly very easily to generate these server-side rendered content easily and efficiently with Project Firefly. So the next one is one of my favorite use cases in the set of 4 use cases that I'm going to talk about today. So this is an event-driven use case where this use case is from one of our larger customers, and we have a partner working with them. The customer is using AEM to serve content, and this, of course, the AEM is fronted by a CDN that caches this content and improves the response time. But the problem that this customer of ours is facing is whenever they update a piece of content and republish it, the updated content is not reflected immediately to visitors. So that is because the content is cached in the CDN, and it does not fetch the updated content from AEM. So the only way they could right now make the updated content serve, like they could serve the updated content, is either they would go in and invalidate the cache manually or wait for the cache to expire, which could be as much as up to 10 hours of waiting time. Instead, what they did was they created this headless Firefly application. This application listens to events that are coming off AEM. So what they are listening to is for events that correspond to updated content being published. By listening to these events, the headless Firefly app simply, once it gets the event, it simply goes into the CDN and validates the cache entry for that particular piece of content. And as soon as the next request hits the CDN, it's not served by cache because the cache has already been invalidated for that content. So the request goes to AEM and fetches the new piece of content from there and then caches it for further requests. So this way, they have eliminated up to 10 hours of latency. The great thing about this use case and why it is my favorite is with Adobe IO events and with Firefly, you can start to leverage these event-driven integrations, event-driven architecture styles. So there's a bunch of events that we already published through AEM, but then you can really even hook up any OSGI event to be published through Adobe IO event and into your Firefly application. So the amount of things that you can imagine without having to poll AEM really expands, and you can really leverage these event-driven architecture to fulfill your use cases. The last use case we have is for AEM asset migration. So this is a typical customer of ours who wants to migrate a large batch of events, large batch of assets into AEM. And by large batch, I am really talking about in the orders of hundreds of terabytes. So what we recommend these customers to do is, instead of building an in-process application, a custom in-process application that would then compete for valuable AEM resources, we really recommend that these customers build a Firefly app that can then use the content fragment API to push assets into AEM as a cloud service. By doing so, the headless Firefly app, by the way, is running on Adobe IO Runtime, which is a serverless platform. So it is really outside of the AEM that is running in the cloud. So this does not impact the performance and the responsiveness of the AEM system. What it also does is, because it's running on a serverless platform, it scales up and down as you need. So if you have, let's say you did a photo shoot and you want to upload a large batch of assets, the app would scale as much as it's needed to, and would process these, would upload these, migrate these assets into AEM. But when it's not being used, when it's idle, it won't cost you money, because with serverless, it scales down. So ultimately, there is no idle resources, and it also does not impact your AEM system on performance, on responsiveness. So routine tasks that already rely on AEM, they can continue as is. So when we talk about all these use cases, I think the top two things that I want to call out, especially with use cases around AEM, with Firefly, one, you can use you don't necessarily have to be a Java AEM developer to extend AEM. You can start using Firefly and JavaScript, the tooling based on JavaScript, code based on JavaScript to extend these functionality. And then because it's running outside that AEM system, it's not impacting the performance and the responsiveness of that system. So let's quickly talk about what's next. And a quick time check tells me we have about 5 minutes. So first of all, Project Firefly is in developer preview, which means that you can sign. First of all, we highly encourage you to sign up for our developer preview. With that, you can get access to Firefly. You can start building these applications. You can get your hands dirty. There's a ton of documentation and resources available. Make sure you take a screenshot of this slide to get the links here. So with developer preview, this is kind of like a beta programs that you can sign into. You can build out your applications. The services and product the developer preview relies on, runtime events, these are already generally available services. So it is a lot of our customers are already building production grade applications on top of Project Firefly. Then we also have a monthly webinar that is hosted by the Firefly team, which is part presentation and part an opportunity for you to ask us questions in person. And lastly, what I want to mention is the other sessions in the Adobe Developers Live, which is right after lunch, Project Firefly Technical Deep Dive, where our Project Firefly team would present the technical side of Project Firefly and would also show you a live demo. And then, as I mentioned, for the first use case, we have a session where the asset compute service extensibility would be shown and talk about the custom asset processing profiles. So watch out for those sessions, come to our monthly hosted webinars, and definitely sign up for our developer preview. Sarah, do you want to talk more about the developer preview?
Sure. So as you guys can see, some of our teammates from Firefly is also here on this session, and they've actually posted some of the links that you're seeing on the screen into the chat pod, so you can easily copy paste that. For any existing enterprise customers or partners, you can all leverage the developer preview sign up link to sign up for Firefly free of charge. As we're currently in developer preview, so I think that we've had a couple questions kind of related to this. As we're currently in developer preview, we're open to all enterprises that are that own some sort of enterprise solution. There's no additional need to basically get this from your sales representative. There are some limitations as we're currently, this is essentially a beta program in nature, but you're welcome to try this out and see how it fits your needs. And when we do have the pricing details as well as licensing details, we'll make sure to inform everybody who is in the preview program. And to quickly address, I guess, some of the questions that has appeared in the session chat, because it looks like we actually have time for a little bit of a Q&A session. First of all, yes, so for every Firefly application, you can build both headless applications as well as single page applications. And for any, so you can essentially both build backend services that runs on the serverless platform as well as front end UI to go with it. And as a part of your backend services, you can basically do whatever you want. So you can talk to Adobe systems using some of the APIs and built-in endpoints. You can also call any external systems that you would like to communicate with. You can expose endpoints of your application so that other systems can ping your application. We're really an application platform, so it gives you a lot of flexibility in terms of how you want to set up your integrations and want to set up connecting points between different systems. I think another bulk of questions that we had was with the cache validation use case. So as I said, a lot of the use cases that is currently on Firefly is not necessarily things that you cannot do in the existing AEM universe, but rather a lot of them are based on the specific needs and asks of the customers, as well as the to their current implementation that they would like to consider Firefly as an alternative way of extending their products. Manik has gone through this kind of in some of the use case explanation. A lot of the advantages to doing it this way is, first of all, you can have this standalone modular service running on Firefly that is not a part of your AEM deployment. So it can be shared by multiple instances. Let's say maybe you have one service that needs to be shared by multiple AEM services, multiple AEM instances. Instead of having to deploy this into all of them, what you can do is basically set up once and for all and have all these different instances call the same Firefly service. So that's one of the use cases that could be very helpful. And let's see, do we have any additional questions? System limitations. So there are some system limitations to the serverless platform. Basically, as when you're defining each one of your each piece or each what we call actions inside Adobe IO runtime, you can define like how many calls you are expecting to come in, like when things should run concurrently or not, like when, because essentially all these actions are running inside a container. You can essentially be able to modify the configuration for how long you want that to live and how you would like your actions to behave. I believe there's some upper bounds in terms of how many concurrent calls we can handle per one endpoint, right? So that we make sure that we're really protected against malicious attacks that way and things are properly queued. You can read more about it all in our documentation in the links that my colleagues have shared in the session chat. With that, I believe that we're actually at time. Thank you all so much for joining us today on a Project Firefly overview. We hope that this was helpful to you in your exploration with different ways of extending AEM. Thank you very much.
And we hope you would join us for our monthly webinars in case you have questions or you want to learn more about us. Thank you so much.